Hello, beautiful souls. It's Reverend Chris. Just being myself, no hair and makeup, wearing my Old Navy Guys hoodie this week. And I'm doing a very light topic. I've been in class all day. I'm going to be busy all weekend. So it's going to be a shorter video. It's not going to have, you're not going to have any Bible verses to study unless you would like. And I wanted to do just a lighter topic because it's been really heavy lately. And it's before Easter where things are going to get heavier in the Bible. So this is for those kind of people who like trivia or like coincidences in the Bible, or looking to just like learn little hints and tips and little fun things. I talked about in my Lent video how Lent is for 40 days before Easter, and that the number 40 comes up a lot in the Bible. And I did a Google search. I found a website called the 40-Day Miracle, and a couple of other websites that just gave Bible verses that talked about the number 40. So I'm just putting all that together in a condensed version to just give you some examples. And it's just really interesting to me. So I thought it'd be like a fun topic. I haven't seen it done before. Maybe it has been, but I haven't seen it. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights in the story of Noah's Ark. When Noah made the ark, which is in the book of Genesis, chapter 7. And then they also used the number 40 again when Noah decided to finally open the window of the ark and look out. It was 40 days after that. And in those times, embalming took 40 days. And Moses was on the mountain with God for 40 days in the book of Exodus. We also hear about, in the book of Numbers, the Israelites walked through the desert for 40 years, and they say the number 40 a few times in that story. That story is a lot about persevering, not giving up, or what happens if you do give up, you won't be successful. You have to have a lot of patience to kind of follow someone through the desert for 40 years. So it's kind of inspiring. It depends how you look at it, of course. Goliath came for 40 days before being killed by David in the book of 1 Samuel. Elijah was strengthened by the angels by just having one meal, and then he fasted for 40 days after that in the book of Kings, 1 Kings. Jonah warned the city of Nineveh that they had 40 days before God would overthrow the city in the book of Jonah. Jesus fasted for 40 days in the wilderness. That's our Lenten story about Jesus. And then Jesus was seen on earth 40 days after his crucifixion. This is in the book of Acts, and that's kind of after Jesus' life. They talked about that. But I thought that was really interesting. A lot of Jesus' stories have the number 40 in them, like that. That was 40 days. The book of Exodus has 40 chapters, so that's a fun fact. Let's see. So in the when they talk about the book of Numbers, they talk about entering the promised land, and they talk about all the judges that they had. Each judge served for 40 years, and this source said judges who served 40 years include Othniel, Deborah, Barak, Eli, and Gideon. And the first three human kings over the children of Israel were Saul, David, and Solomon, and they each ruled for 40 years. And then Abraham tried to bargain with God to not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if 40 righteous people were found. Both Isaac and Esau were 40 years old when they first married in the book of Genesis 25 and 26. And you know God flooded the earth for 40 days, so that's kind of a repeat. After the Pharaoh Jacob, or Israel, remember he changed it, or they changed his name in the Bible. Once Jacob was a name that meant like sneaky, a supplanter, undercover, kind of like a master manipulator. When he became good, he became Israel. So he died in Egypt, and the Egyptians spent 40 days embalming his body in Genesis 50. And then this other source that I found through a Google search, that was kind of like a Bible search, not really app, but kind of website, said mentioning the number 40 is mentioned 146 times in Scripture, and the number 40 generally symbolizes a period of fasting, trial, or probation. During Moses' life, he lived 40 years in Egypt and then 40 years in the desert before God selected him to lead the people out of slavery. Moses was also on Mount Sinai for 40 days and nights on 2 separate occasions in Exodus 24:34 and Exodus 24:18 and 34, 1 through 28. Let's see. He also sent spies for 40 days to investigate the land God promised the Israelites as an inheritance in Numbers 13 and 14. The prophet Jonah powerfully warned ancient Nineveh for 40 days of its destruction would become because of its many sins, and that is in Ezekiel. And then Elijah went 40 days without food and water. We talked about that already. So he had the one meal that was blessed by angels and was sustained for 40 days. So I love that story. The number 40 also represents a generation of man. So back in those days, you didn't really get super duper duper old, or if you did, you got so old that it was like more than we even have now. You were either one or the other, it seemed in the Bible. And the Egyptians, let me read it how they have it. The number 40 can also represent a generation of man. Because of their sins after leaving Egypt, God swore the generations of Israelites who left Egyptian bondage would not enter their inheritance in Canaan in Deuteronomy 1. The children of Israel were punished by wandering in the wilderness for 40 years before a new generation was allowed to possess the gifts of God. So it's really interesting. It's like of many, many books of the Bible and many different stories, whether they have Jesus in them or not. It's really interesting how 40 is either 40 days, 40 years. It's kind of exciting how when you read the Bible enough, you start to see these interesting patterns, and that's what I want people to get excited about. There's so many different facets to the Bible. It's timeless. It has mystical energy. When you read it, you start to feel things, remember things, understand things, and see little patterns like that, and it's kind of fun and exciting. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. I want you to have a wonderful week and be blessed, and always like, share, subscribe, and you can donate. I'll have the link to Patreon below. And I love you all, and have a wonderful week once again.